evening, everyone. Today is October the 17th, 2022. The time is 6:30 p.m. This is the Rockford Area Schools Board of Education regular session. We'll begin by calling our meeting to order with a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone. Next on to board roll call. Brady Anderson.
Here.
Eric Gordy. Jenny Nealon.
Here.
Jessica Johnson.
Here.
Beth Fresca.
Here.
Amy Edwards here. We do have full quorum of the board, all members present. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of our agenda this evening. I would entertain a motion.
Eric Gordy, go ahead.
I'll make motion, Justin.
Second.
To approve the agenda.
Okay, I have a first from Ms. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Gordy. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion or comment? All right, pending no further discussion or comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Agenda passes unanimously. Next, moving on to item number 3, which is our public comment portion of the board meeting. I will read our statement as per usual. Public comment at each regular school board meeting is an opportunity for residents of the Rockford Area School District to address the school board. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. To ensure that all individuals have had a chance to speak, speakers will be limited to one 3-minute presentation. The public comment portion of a regular school board meeting is not a time to debate an issue, rather for the board to hear comments from community members. It is important to remember that the board has a legal responsibility to protect the rights and privacy, or the rights to privacy and due process for all employees and students. This means that both district policy and the Minnesota law prohibit public disclosure of matters that involve private data about students or employees, even without naming the student or employee in an open session. This prohibition includes a public comment portion of a school board meeting. The board respects and values input on matters of concerns, but when they involve complaints about a particular student or employees, such input must be heard and addressed by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or the superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. With that, I'll look to see if we have any public comment this evening. No? All right, no public comment requests have been submitted. At this time, I will close public comment. Next, moving on to item number 4, which is our consent agenda items. I would entertain a motion related to our consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a first from Ms. Praska. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Anderson. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion or comment related to our consent agenda this evening? Pending no further comment or discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Consent agenda carries unanimously. Next, we've now finally gotten to the fun part of the meeting. Item number 5, the celebration time, the Reams Student Lemonade Stand. Ms. Nyhus, are you presenting with this group this morning or this evening?
I sure am. Before I bring these fine young gentlemen up here, when I was asked to do this, it's very early on in the year. We're in like week 5, 4 or 5, something like that. And like I said to Superintendent Dean, I said, man, it's real hard this early because I feel like our kids are just getting started and they've hardly done anything yet. But what we can't forget is that kids do things outside of our building that still affect our community, that still are amazing. And I have 3 young gentlemen here that are probably the 3 shyest boys in my building. Who I want to take you back, as I saw in my car that it said 33 degrees when I walked in here, and I said, I'm not ready. It was just one of those last, I think it was about a 99-degree day just a few weeks back. School had started, and they set up a lemonade stand. And I'm going to let them tell you about it and, you know, just what started this and what they did with the money and how they are affecting their community. So I have Eli Menard, I have Jason Menard, and I have Finn Webb, 2 3rd graders and a 4th grader. So they are going to share with you what they did. So come on up, guys. We're going to try and make this work for you. And you can start and just tell them kind of what you did in terms of putting together your lemonade stand?
So we started with, obviously we started with the lemonade stand. Then we went to school, and once we got back, we started, we saw a mom with the lemonade and ingredients, and we went straight away to the lemonade stand, and we asked our friends if they wanted to come along, and Ben wanted to come, so he did, because it was his first time setting up a lemonade stand. And so he came, and so we set the lemonade stand up, and we raised $61 in 1 hour. And, yeah, somewhere in between an hour 45. And we made $61, and we inspired people who came along. We said donating half to the food shelf, and so they paid a little more, and that's how we ended up with 61. And we gave at least, I think, $25 to $30 to the food shelf. And yeah.
That's awesome.
And can you guys tell them where you set your lemonade stand up? Where was it located?
Lions Park, right a little bit out of the park where where that building was. And then there's like where the sign is, and then there's the four turns are. And
Smart.
That's pretty smart.
Do you guys remember that you made $60 and you donated $60? Oh, yeah. Wasn't that the case?
When we were thinking about giving the money to charity, we were making a lot of money because people were kind to us, and
That's awesome.
Maybe you want to
tap.
Okay.
So you can't.
Do you want to tell them that?
You got it, Ben. You can do it, buddy.
At the first start, our first donation was these two kind older men. I think they were in high school. And high school or middle school, I don't know. And they were our first customers, and they were super generous and gave us $20.
Whoa.
And how many glasses of lemonade did they buy?
2.
What?
No,
Unlimited.
yeah, but they got your glasses.
Share about when you brought the money to the food shelf.
When we brought the money to the food shelf, we didn't exactly know how it worked. There was a room over here, there was a center, and then there was another room over there. And we were like, whoa, there's a lot of food here. And we after we donated all the money, we got a picture with a younger boy also wanted to come. He was about 5 years old. He's our, no, 5 years old. He's our friend, and he just lives up like 6 houses up from our street, and he wanted to come along, so he came, and then he came, and we got a picture with the lady who worked there. And after we left, Mom told us what a food shelf was.
I think the thing we can't forget is that stuff like this, this is happening in our town all the time. And they're kind of those unsung heroes that we don't ever hear about, and yet they're doing it. I'm not kidding you, I was maybe 3-4, all my roads are closed, so I go through Delano to go home to Chaska. And I was not quite to Delano, and I got a text from my secretary, Bobby Dalkey, who said, I just want you to know I just bought lemonade from 3 of probably the best salesmen in town. And so I already knew this had gone on that night. And then, of course, as I learned more about this story and we talked, I'm like, as a school board, you need to hear this because, like I said, they're sort of the unsung heroes that these kind of things happen all the time with our elementary students, and I don't think we know enough about that. And they're giving back to their community as well as learning those entrepreneurial skills. And I just give these 3 boys a lot of credit, so thank you.
Guys, come and get a picture.
Yeah,
quick.
come and get a picture.
Yeah, if you gotta come up here right by that. Shake your hand, young man. Good job.
Not me.
Good job, Ben. That won't work.
Here, I'll get you guys this way. Yeah, step back just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Woo!
Perfect, thank you.
Good job, gentlemen.
Nice job.
Thank you. Things up hot chocolate stamp.
You don't want to stay for the rest?
Well, thank you so much, Principal Nyhus, for thinking about that as a celebration story for us tonight. It was, I would just say, a great way to ground us on the what, the why, and the who we are in this community. So, thank you. What a great group of kiddos. Well, it's going to be a tough act to follow. So next, moving on to item number 6A, which is our Director of Teaching and Learning report, Mr. Daniker.
Chair Edwards, members of the board, Superintendent Dean. Tough act to follow, especially Finn was wearing a sport coat.
Right?
I thought I was going to get away with not wearing a sport coat tonight, but Finn's making me look bad, so go Finn. So I'm here tonight to take us through, there we go, our MCA assessment results for 2022. We'll start by going through some acknowledgements, some background context. We'll talk a bit about our results, and then we'll shift into analyzing our results, key takeaways, the highlights that were evident, and then also talk about next steps. First, acknowledgements. There's a lot that goes into MCA testing each and every year, aside from just the testing dates and the kids doing their best that they can on the test themselves. There's a lot of work that goes on in the background. I want to make sure those people are recognized as well. So Kevin Neff, our district's data and technology integration specialist, does a huge chunk of the work in terms of the background preparation to make that happen. Connie Lure, our data specialist, same. Our site assessment coordinators, so we have district assessment coordinators as well as site assessment coordinators. So I've reused that Shay Roskowiak. Last year at the middle school was Tucker Reek. And then at the high school, Principal Bernard took on that role last year. All of as well, I want to acknowledge all the staff members who proctored or otherwise indirectly supported the MCA process, and typically on an annual basis we train all of our teachers and many of our paras into be proctors, and so we have as many, we cast that net as far as we possibly can. And then also just an acknowledgement for our principals for providing leadership then and since. Just again, they do a lot of the heavy lifting at the site level, so I want to make sure they're recognized also. The background of the MCAs, the board, you're well aware of the background of what the MCAs are, but just for our public audience, the MCAs are the acronym is Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments, and they are state tests in reading, mathematics, and science that are used to meet federal and state legislative requirements. The tests are administered every year to measure student performance relative to the Minnesota academic standards that specify what students in a particular grade should know and be able to do. And that is taken directly from the Department of Ed's website. So why do we do these tests? Why do we give these tests? Again, from the Department of Ed. We use the MCA to find out how well schools have aligned curriculum to and instructed students in the Minnesota academic standards. And then jumping down to the next highlighted section, schools use the information to improve classroom teaching and learning. And this is a slide also drawn directly from the Department of Education. And it's a fairly useful slide in talking about where the MCAs fit into the normal work that schools do. And so if we start at the bottom with classroom assessments, those closest to the students. In the classroom each and every day, every week, we are performing formative and summative assessments for our students to be able to assess and know where they are at. That's communicated out to parents, other teachers, various stakeholders. And that data is regularly used by teachers to inform instruction and report student learning, again, for grading purposes to parents, guardians, what have you. At the district-wide level, so going to the next stage there, district and school assessments, we regularly do benchmark and interim assessments. Locally here, we use the FAST assessments to accomplish this. They're administered periodically through the year, so locally we use FAST 3 times a year. And that data is used by groups of teachers and educational leaders, such as the principals, for long-term instructional planning, just as we do in Rockford area schools. And at the statewide level, at the top there, that's where MCAs come in. So these are administered once a year in the springtime, and that data is used by school and district leaders to evaluate curriculum and programming. That's the point I want to focus on just for a moment here, and really kind of strip away all the verbiage from this slide and just focus on the image of the slide. Really what you're looking at is the farther we get away from the student, the more that an assessment is less about the individual and the more it is about the whole. And that's the thing I want to drive home as we talk about the MCAs tonight. So we're not talking about individual students when we talk about the MCAs, we're talking about really a system gauge or a system check. And so really going back to that question, how well have schools aligned curriculum to and instructed students in Minnesota academic standards? So that's our grounding and that's our focus for the conversation tonight. For those interested, our school's results for this year and also the past 5 calendar years, only 4 academic years were tested because of the COVID pandemic in 2020. But if you go to the MDU's website, you can find results going back 5 calendar years. And so the pathway to do that for those listening to the audio recording is go to education.mn.gov, go to Data Center, then Minnesota Report Card, then click on Rockford. And users can choose between elementary, middle school, high school, and district-wide results. So following that pathway, I did want to share with the board our district-wide results, kind of as an aggregate. And so this is how we did last spring. And again, you can see the 5 calendar years previous below. So to the farthest right is how we did last spring, 2022, on the MCA exams. So district-wide, this was the amount of students meeting or exceeding in those 2 categories. So in math, we had as a district 42.4%, in reading it was 53.1%, and in science 44.7%. And I want to pause just for a second because as we move forward, we're going to strategically look at, as we assess our own scores on the MCAs, want to focus on really 2 benchmarks here. One is scoring us against ourselves and our past history, which is relevant and necessary, but also scoring us against the baseline, which is the Minnesota average. So those are the 2 pieces that you'll see as we move forward that we're comparing ourselves against. So the next slide shows side-by-side district-wide performance in Rockford area schools to statewide performance over that same timeline. You'll notice the part I want to point out here is that the trend lines for both are downward trajectory. And so the state, along with the district, has been performing a little bit less proficient each year over the past 5 years. However, the other takeaway is that our line in a downward trajectory is a little bit steeper than the statewide is, and we'll come back to that as well. So this graph is an internal chart looking at our performance. And so what we're looking at here is, again, two things, comparing ourselves to ourselves and also comparing ourselves to the state averages. At the top, you can see what this is, how this is calculated. So this is the percent of MCA cohorts above Minnesota mean. On an average year, we have 17 cohorts that test on the MCAs. And so, for instance, a third grade reading, that's one cohort. Third grade math is a second cohort. So 17 total cohorts. And what you're looking at is the percentage of those cohorts who have tested above the Minnesota state average. In 2017, for instance, all 17 of our cohorts tested above state average. In 2016 and 2018, it was 16 out of 17, and so on. And so what we're looking at is, if you look at 2022, that number was 9 out of 17 cohorts scored above average. Big takeaway here is that we consistently score above average. The trend line, however, is that fewer of our cohorts are performing above state average. Similar chart, a little bit different in calculation. However, this is MCA value above Minnesota mean. What that means is that if you take our cohorts and you look at their score versus state average, you compile that total, you come up with a grand total. So for instance, in 2017, when all 17 cohorts scored above state average, combining those scores above state average into one number was 141.4. And interestingly enough, in 2018, even though we only had 16 of 17 cohorts scoring above state average, our grand total actually rose to 163.6. That's actually a very amazing number if you think about that. Over 17 cohorts, that means that on average, they were scoring 9 points or so above state average across the board. It's an amazing tally. Moving forward to 2022, you see that the number for last year was 11.5, which means that on average, our cohorts were scoring between 0.5 point and 1 point above state average. The big takeaway here is twofold. Again, we continue to score in general above state average. However, the trajectory has been downward over the last several years. As we analyze our results and continue to analyze our results, this is the actual spreadsheet that those two previous bar charts came from. The numbers have been removed because they're not pertinent to what I'm going to share with you. What we're looking at is the white and the yellow. The yellow would be the cohorts that scored below state average. The white would be those that scored above. You can see again the vast majority of time that we're scoring above state average over time, but the yellow areas certainly are of concern. As we do analyze these internally, one of the things we're looking for is trends. And so there's two trend lines, two directions of trend lines to take a look at on this chart. First is the diagonal trend lines. Those are of individual cohorts over time. And so when we see yellow in those cells over time, that means that a cohort, again, over time, has not been accomplishing or meeting state averages. When you look at the horizontal lines, what you're looking at is that's a content area. And so both are concerning. One is a little bit less of within our control, and that's the diagonal. We can't always control our students. We can't always guarantee what that product looks like, but we have more control, greater control over the horizontal lines, the performance in specific content areas. And so again, as we think about analyzing our performance results on the MCAs, this is useful to take a look at. One thing I do want to highlight here is what we're hoping for is when we do have these trend lines, that we have the yellow disappear over time. So you notice that diagonal yellow line, that was a cohort that did not perform well for 3 consecutive years, 2013, 14, 15, and then that line disappears because we made whatever we needed to do in terms of amending performance, and they performed above average for the next several years. So that's what we're hoping for. Obviously, we're hoping for no lines at all, but when we do have lines, we're hoping they disappear. So again, going back to takeaways, relative to the 3 big takeaways tonight are this: relative to past district performance, our scores declined in 2022. Relative to state average, our district score performance was roughly equivalent. Slightly above average, but roughly equivalent. And then the last takeaway, both district and Minnesota performance have declined since 2018. And so the trend lines are fairly congruent that way. One last piece to share with the board, with the North Star accountability system from MDE, 2 of our testing subgroups were identified for support. We have been, this is the second go-round with North Star accountability in terms of subgroups being identified for support. Previously, we had 3 subgroups identified in 2018 for support. Moving forward, we have 2 subgroups. 2 of those 3 are consistent. They're the same as were identified in 2018. And we have a little bit of a luxury in that we're moving forward with the same support. So our Regional Center of Excellence, Resource Training and Solutions out of St. Cloud continues to be our support for moving forward on those 2 cohorts. And so we're excited to do that, and we have a great team in place to help support that. There were some highlights for MCA testing this year that I do want to make sure that we mention as well. And I wanted to pick out one from math, science, and reading to share with the board. 3rd grade math performed 9 percentage points higher than state average. 5th grade science was 11 percentage points above the Minnesota average. And 6th grade reading was 15 percentage points above Minnesota average. So not all bad news tonight. We did have some cohorts that performed very, very strongly. I want to make sure that we take the time to celebrate and mention that. So what about next steps? I want to go back to this slide. This is, again, why we give these tests, to find out how well schools have aligned curriculum to and instructed students in the Minnesota academic standards, and for schools to use this information to improve classroom teaching and learning. So as we think about next steps, that's the direction we're going to go. We're going to use this information to improve classroom teaching and learning, and to ensure that we have aligned curriculum to and instructed students in those standards that we are accountable for. So that'll be the bulk of our work moving forward from the Department of Teaching and Learning, and working with the principals and the teachers within each individual building as well. So for teaching and learning next steps, we are going to ensure alignment of curriculum to and instruction of students in those standards. How will we do that? We are going to make sure that we have a curriculum review cycle in place that is predicated on state standards, the state standard revision cycle. And so what you're looking at, I'm actually going to click to the next slide so you can see this a little bit larger. And so we have adopted an internal curriculum review cycle. This is now in the hands of the teachers and the principals as well, and we're actually going to dig our hands in for the first time on Wednesday this week during our professional development time. But this curriculum review cycle goes out through 2030-31, and basically after that it'll simply be a repetition of years previous. How to read this is at the top. If you look at the first row across, it says year -3 standards are finalized. What that means is that is the year that the Minnesota Department of Education finalizes the standards and puts them into place. So for instance, the science standards were finalized in 21-22. We are currently in the 22-23 school year, or in the first year of research and preparation. Next year, science will move into year -1, meaning select and integrate materials. So we'll make sure that we complete our purchases, for instance, for curriculum for different needs in terms of academic support for science next year. And then they go into implementation. That's that light green band across the top center of the cycle in 24-25. And really what new implementation is that's when MDE begins their accountability measures for those standards. So the next, the science MCA will be amended to reflect the new standards beginning in 24-25. And that's just, again, example of one content area. You see the various content areas across the top. Across the top also, where you see parenthetically MDE or local. MDE does not have state standards for all content areas, and that's where they leave it to local control. And typically what many schools in the state will do is use national standards when MDE is lacking specific standards, and that's our plan as well. Another thing that we are going to do moving forward to make sure that we have fidelity in terms of instruction and curriculum around standards is curriculum mapping. So we're going to, so mapping is predicated on the what, the where, and the how of state standards and how they are addressed in courses and grade levels. And so, again, on Wednesday, we are going to take the next steps in developing and I shouldn't say developing our maps, we're gonna redefine our maps. This was actually last as an initiative in the district starting in 2014. Some of those maps still exist today, and I know some of the board members are nodding their heads because you were around for that and we're very familiar. And so some of those maps still exist today. Other ones, unfortunately, have started to accumulate some dust, and these need to be living documents. And so we're going to make sure that we go back to that work. We're going to take what was the good work that was done in 2014 and continue forward with it. And we're going to make sure that we're going to resuscitate those maps where maybe in some content areas haven't been truly living documents. So we're going to make sure that that happens. And then the last piece, we're going to ensure that there is vertical alignment predicated on ensuring internal coherence of standard aligned curriculum. And so to make sure that the system is speaking, we're going to make sure that content areas meet regularly on a K-12 basis and make sure that we are being accountable and holding ourselves accountable to what we are held accountable to. And that is making sure, again, that the curriculum is aligned across the system, and that we're preparing ourselves as teachers and our students as learners to do the very best they can when challenged with the Minnesota standards and the MCA assessments. So again, in summation, we're going to do 3 things to ensure alignment of curriculum to and instruction of students in the Minnesota academic standards. Again, curriculum mapping, curriculum review cycle, using that as a guide, and then also the vertical alignment that goes with both of those as well. So I want to pause because I just gave a lot of information to the board, and I just want to pause and make sure that if there's any questions or check-ins or anything that you want to discuss.
Any questions? Oh, Ms. Praska.
Yes. Thank you for that information. It's very clear and easy to understand, so I appreciate that. One point is when we look at the state being kind of where I want to remind ourselves that the state average is really not that great. And I would like Rockford to aim for higher because let's say approximately 60% are meeting proficiency at the state level. When we consider an equitable education and opportunity for all students, that means 40% are not achieving. So I want to remind ourselves that. It's great to have that out there, but I want Rockford students to be well above that because it's not equitable if 40% of our students across the state are not achieving. So we have to remember that. Also, a question I have for you is when you go back to that slide to that curriculum review, what about like right now there's a huge move to push the science of reading into your English language arts. And what if the curriculum review isn't out for a while? We know that our teachers and the students are struggling in reading in the district. So is our process to bring, when we know that there's a need, do we have to wait for that curriculum review or is our process to bring something in, like right now we know we need it?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So one of the things for clarification for our teachers as well as we begin to use this is that really the only thing that's kind of hard and fast are the top 4 rows on this chart. Really for starting with when the state implements new standards, or excuse me, not finalizes new standards, to the internal work we do to prepare ourselves for implementation. Anything beyond that is just simply best practice. And so you'll notice on the left side of column 1, in year 1 it says monitor implementation, year 2 assess and evaluate, year 3 modify and adjust. That's just good practice, right? But it's not hard and fast. There's no red tape associated with that. So to your point, absolutely. If there's things that come forward that are going to improve our process and they don't fall necessarily within this timeline, we're not going to say, well, it doesn't fall within the timeline, so we're not going to do it. We're going to be reasonable and rational and proactive, right? And so, yeah, but I mean, the first 4 rows are really the parts that we want to be clear on because that's when, again, the state is doing their actions, when we need to be making local investments in terms of curriculum, training, all of that sort of thing. But beyond that, we're going to do what's right.
Thank you. And one more follow-up. So when you think about where our students are, what I'd like to hear sometime, and not tonight, is then how is that interwoven within the MTSS process in the district? Because this is all what every student, core instruction, grade level, which should be every student. But then how are we providing access to that? So I'd like to see how that's integrated within, a little bit deeper within the district level MTSS. But very good, thank you so much for your clarification.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Anderson.
So this data is, it's disappointing, right? But it's not inconsistent with the state, as you highlighted. It is inconsistent with our touch districts. Their drops were not as dramatic as what we saw in Rockford. So if you look at Orono, Delano, St. Michael, Buffalo, the regulars, right? They did not see as dramatic of a drop across the board looking at the state data. So it's, our taxpayer dollars went into making that great data available on the state site. Parents use this information to make decisions. I know it doesn't do a good job of highlighting cohort performance. It's aggregate. It highlights that there is something systematically that we need to address, some steps we need to take to improve our performance, to get that line ideally going upward, right? It goes back to what I talk about regularly. Every open enrollment in this district is a relief on our taxpayers' wallet and helps to bring additional revenue into the district. This data does not help that. It hurts our district given the drops in performance against state standards bigger than our touch districts. We can leverage those positive points that you highlighted in marketing messages and so on, to get that on greatschools.org or whatever that we want to do marketing wise. But I guess what it comes down to is what can we do at the board level to support improving performance against state standards through policy and budget. That's really ultimately the question that this group can address and can help you with, because we can see that systematically something isn't right. We're underperforming against our touch districts, and I think that's an important piece of data to look at the board level, because that's who we're competing with to get students in here to offset the tax burden of a property poor district. Yes, outside development is happening. That's great. That's helping bring revenue in. But students, bringing in students and helping parents make the decision to say that Rockford is the system that I want my student in, and this data doesn't help that. So what can we do at the board level to help?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack. But to go back to something you said earlier in your remarks, you're absolutely right. What is interesting about our local results, and certainly I don't have the answers as I stand here for you in terms of the why on this one, but we were impacted locally. Our results dipped lower than our touch district counterparts following the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
So for whatever reason, and there's probably a multitude of reasons why that happened, that was noted and noticeable as well. So thank you for pointing that out. In terms of what the board can do, I'm sure Superintendent Dean has thoughts of her own. I think the biggest thing is that my time in the district, which 10, 11 months now, I think we start with just the board and the work that you do in providing good governance, right? Good leadership for our district is noted and it's appreciated and it's present and all of those things, right? And I think that's a great basis to start from. The whys and wherefore beyond that, it's probably a conversation that's much more broad ranging than our time tonight, but I think we have a good basis to start from. This is a district that has a lot to sell to potential families and potential students. And the MCAs, I just want to go back to kind of finish up with this one. The MCAs are one facet
Yep.
of that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very good district in many, many ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
The chart I went back to on the screen here, like you said, we're still performing above average. We're not performing to our historic capabilities and capacities, and that's the part that we need to address. But again, that's one part of a district, and I think maybe the last takeaway I'll just share is that when we have these situations, is being transparent, honest, and open is also a great starting point.
Yeah, there are a ton of data points, and this one is an important one that people do look closely at. I think what I would expect to see is asks for positions, changes in, curriculum, changes in positions, changes in the structure of the district and that sort of stuff. That's what we can help with at the board level and provide funding for that.
or allocate funding for that somehow in the budget while maintaining a balanced budget, which is always tricky. But I think the message here is status quo, again, is probably not what we want to pursue. So I would expect, you know, proposals for some level of change in how we operate going forward. But again, I also do recognize it's one data point. So, and it's at the state level. But it does do a good job of showing systemic issues, right? So that we just, and we'll need to rely on you guys to say this is what those issues are and this is how we address them. So, and then at the board level we can say this is how we'll fund them, and this is, you know, these are the trade-offs and so on. But
That's good governance.
so that's how we can help. I would hope that you guys are taking this data and using it to assess the system holistically. So, I'm done.
Thank you, Brady. Superintendent Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Director Brady, for bringing that to our attention. No, the data's not good. I mean, we looked at it, it's not good. To answer your question directly, at the governance level, as Mr. Daniker stated, you know, we offer a lot of great things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, our data has dropped. But I will say for Rockford area schools, we encourage all of our students to take the MCAs. And I do know that there are school districts that allow kids to opt out, encourage kids to opt out, strategically assure that kids that will perform at high levels take those tests. And we haven't done that. We want all of our kids to test. We don't, you know, we try to bring our PSEO kids back to test. I don't know if we were able to do that last year because of the pandemic. But again, we want all of our kids to test. And just one other comment, and I don't know how it plays into the MCA data, but we were in person and a lot of the state was not. And so again, I don't know how that played into the test results, but it is one data point. And you're right, we have to get better. So acknowledge that we have to get better, for sure.
Thank you. Did you, Ms. Kraska?
I just wanted to play off of what Director Brady or Anderson said was, the good thing about the MCAs is it's a system level analysis. And so we think about systems and what needs to change. It's not student level, it's systems level, and things that impact system level are what can we have to analyze it, and I know that you're doing that. And thinking about, well, what professional learning do we have to have? It's not so much about the students as to what are we doing across the board. And I do know, I participated in research, what we're probably finding in our area is there's nationally, what happened during
Absolutely,
COVID,
yeah.
is the students in certain subgroups did much worse than other subgroups. So we have to think about, so what now can we do system-wise to help? And I talked about equity, so think about that. So I just wanted to bring that up, like at a systems level, that's what, yes, MCAs are not perfect, but they're really important for that system level. And what can we do to help support that system?
Any other questions or comments? All right.
Appreciate the update.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for the update tonight.
Absolutely, and then I did have one more slide. I just
Oh,
wanted to
yes.
kind of briefly lead into the principals, and as we think about next steps again, you know, our next steps are really going to be to help. What's going to help guide our next steps, I should say, is looking at our strategic directions, right? And so you'll hear the principals in our next segment talking about the school improvement plans that they have come up with their buildings. And so as you hear those plans and we think about, you know, the impact that those plans have on things like MCA scores, improving educational programs, partnerships, aligning, developing proactive training response protocol, all those different things. Again, all this stuff weaves together and kind of goes to exactly the comments from the board tonight. This is part of the bigger picture, is one really important data point, and we have a lot of opportunity to improve. All right, so with that, I think
Yeah.
we're going to welcome Ms. Maggers.
I am, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll move on to item number 6B, which is our Reams Principal Report. Principal Magnus.
Back slide. Back slide.
You do that.
Good evening again.
I think Mr. Daniker laid it out best and really laid out the groundwork of several of the things that not only our building is working on, but that we're working on district-wide. And this is our second year of doing our SIP goals after our strategic plan was put in place. And I believe I said it last spring to all of you that school improvement is continuous. It is continuous improvement. It's not, okay, we're done and we're gonna put that on the shelf and we're all gonna start with complete new goals this year. So you will hear not only from me, but several of my colleagues of things that we are continuing in the work that we started last year. Digging deeper, doing more of, getting better, and some are a little bit new. But we did sit down this summer as an admin team and really talked through all of our SIP goals, and it's interesting how many of them, one dovetails into the other, or we're all working on kind of the same thing. So when we get to Mr. Menard and you say, but I've heard this 3 times already, that's why. So I'll go through this with the Reams site improvement goals. Our first goal is that we're going to collaborate with our EL teachers to use best practices and strategies to meet the learning needs of the students who receive EL services. This is a continuation of last year. We are one of those sites and one of those areas that was identified in need of how to help our students who receive those EL services. The work we've done with Amanda Teagles and our regional centers of excellence has been deep and is getting deeper. And so deep, in fact, that our EL teachers are doing a little bit of work that's cutting edge in her world, and she's asking them to present at a conference this year. And they're kind of like, okay, well, this is a little out of my realm, but it's messy and it's good and it's good work that they're digging in and not afraid to try things. And so I give them a lot of credit for just standing up in front of folks at a conference and saying, yeah, this is what we're trying, because not people aren't always willing to try those things that are a little different and a little hard. Some of the things that we're doing is our EL teachers are providing a profile to all of our staff members who work with those students. Our special ed department has been doing this for a while. They say these are the students you'll be working with, these are your IEP goals, this is kind of what you should know about them. We're working on that now with our students who receive those EL services to say, how do you best work with this child and how do you best help move them forward in terms of what they need. What's that home language? What are just all the things we know about them? And so that is new this year. And our EL teachers sat down with all of our classroom teachers prior to the start of school and worked on this with them. So they walked in with that real solid knowledge of the students that they're working with. They're also doing some push-in services and some pull-out services. Push-in is different this year. EL has oftentimes been a pull-out service. They're oftentimes pushing in, they're working with the teachers to say, what can I pre-teach? So when the kids go back to the classroom and have that lesson, they feel very successful saying, I already know this, we've talked about this. And so it's really good to collaborate more with teachers. And obviously that comes with planning time. That comes with the ability to say, yes, I'm willing to collaborate with you and have you come into my classroom and co-teach with me. And that too is not always easy work, but we've got a lot of people that are doing that as well. And so that is our first goal. Our second goal is that we're going to have ongoing ALICE training, communications with families, and practice strategies with students to promote better school safety and preparedness. This is a continuation of the work that we did last year. At our back to school meeting this year, the staff was updated as an entire district on those ALICE strategies in terms of how to react in a crisis, especially an active shooter crisis. And so we've talked about that. The next thing that we've talked about is as a district, we need to do a reunification plan. I give this story a lot. My sister's an educator, and she said, oh, we have a plan. Cool, what's your plan? Well, our school goes to the school next door. And then what, I say to her. And she says, what do you mean? And then what? How do you get every child back to every family in one piece? You know this child belongs to this parent. You know that, yeah, we don't have a plan. And she says, and that's funny and it's not funny, because that's what we're looking at really, is to say, I don't care if it takes 5 hours to get every child back to a family, we're gonna get them back in one piece, and we're gonna get them back in the most systematic way as possible. And so this Wednesday, we will have our first professional development day, and our entire district staff will take the afternoon to not only go to rally points. What happens if you're able to evacuate, get out of the building, and then go to a rally point? Buses will pick all of us up, and we will go to our reunification site and practice. What will that look like? What will that look like if the police send us to a different reunification site? And we can, at least in our heads, adjust. Educators are the best people to adjust on the fly. They do it every single day. And so it will give them an understanding to do that. We were going to do that last year, and COVID ramped up, and putting people on buses all at the same time was probably not a really good idea. And so that is something we will do this year. And then before we start training kids, the 3 principals and Tiffany with our early childhood programs are making a video. In fact, we're doing that tomorrow. So we're putting a video out to families to say, this is what we're going to do with your kids. It will be age appropriate. It will be something that we prepare them for. But we don't want to start doing that with kids without talking to parents first. We can hold a meeting, but you know what happens when 15 families come and everyone else is, wait, you did what with my child? So we're going to put out a video so people can watch that. Do we expect phone calls? Yep, we do. And we're going to walk people through it and just try and help them understand what we're doing. I always take people back to Uvalde. Those kids did exactly what they were trained to do. They were trained to sit under their desk and shelter in place, and we have 22 students that are deceased because of that. We have to help kids be better, and that's our job. And so, but we don't want to scare the daylights out of them, and we also want them to be prepared, and we want parents to understand that. So that'll be the next piece that's coming with our ALICE training. And then we start working with kids. We start working with kids. And so that's goal number 2 for Reams. Our third goal is that we're going to improve our supports for student learning and social emotional learning by utilizing the MTSS process with fidelity and working to help all students feel a sense of belonging at Reams. This is not brand new work either. This is also a continuation of work that we've done in the past. We're working with Ben Bonnet and with our Director of Teaching and Learning, Rob Daniker, and just really trying to shore up that MTSS process. What does the I-team process look like? How do we help students at a deeper level, whether it's behavior, whether it's academic, and really do that work with fidelity, getting into that tier 1, which is that classroom level, and saying, how do we first help students there, and then when we need to take them up through the levels of support. And then we're really working for that social emotional learning as well. The goal this year, I think, in the district from kindergarten through, or pre-K through 12th grade is really, what is that sense of belonging? Do I feel like I belong here? And that goes everything from the second step lessons that the counselors are doing with all of our students to, we've started PBIS strategies in our building. We've had a couple of teachers that have come to us very strongly PBIS trained and have taken that on as a committee and really worked with my staff and just really started to work with kids and say, what do we expect in the halls? What do we expect in the classroom? How does that look consistent? And they're doing it with fidelity, and I'm super, super proud of them. And you know, even as we went into classrooms at the beginning of the school year, I do that every single year. It was a lot of, do we feel like we belong, and what does that look like? What does that look like? And so we're really working hard on that, and of course that wraps into our kindness project as well. So that's our next goal. Our fourth goal is that the Reams teachers will update their curriculum maps and arts maps to reflect current standards and arts-infused lessons and units. Rob talked a little bit about that when he did his report. That yes, it's been a little while since we've done that. We are partnering very closely with the teaching and learning department, just because those questions come to me, would we update our maps if the standards will be changing? Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is going to be more than a one-year goal. But as we did our review and reflection last year with Northwest Suburban, that was something that we walked into them saying, and they turned around and said, yep, you're right. It's time to update our arts maps as well and say, what are we doing as those, not only those specific lessons, but the units that we're doing to really highlight our magnet program, and that's our arts mapping. And so we'll be working on that as we go through. My staff knows this. Rob and I have talked about this. As we go through every professional development day where it says principal directed time, this is what our work will be at Reams, is we will be working on curriculum mapping and arts mapping. What a game changer when we finished these last time, and it's time to ramp that up a little bit. And like I said, we were at the top of our game pre-COVID when we went through our review and reflection. Northwest Suburban walked out of our school and they were singing our praises from the top of the rooftop, and everybody fell down a notch or two through COVID, and it's time to take that up a notch again and just say, okay, and this is part of that, because that's the basis of what we do. So that is our goal number 4. Our goal number 5 is 100% of the teachers will increase communication about Reams as a magnet program and the children they serve. I was thinking about this, Reagan, when you asked your question about how do we, highlight this for our families. It's not just our test scores. Obviously, that matters, and it is one data point. But this is what brings people in, is the fact that we have 3 magnet programs. The fact that they understand what we really do. It's everywhere, and from what are we putting in our concert programs to Grandparents' Day. They come in. I will tell you, my first year at Grandparents' Day, it's my 17th year in the district. Our first year, it gets to be an hour and a half before Grandparents' Day is going to start, and they're coming in already. We better go up to the school, right? So they come in, and there's nothing, I guess, maybe as a prior performer that drives me crazier than when people sit around and have nothing to do. So year 2, I started playing piano for them. I would just, play piano for them for 45 minutes. And now after they come in, I was like, what? I wonder how many of these grandparents really know what their child is involved in every day. And so I talked to them about what they get as an arts magnet student. And we get all done, and then a couple of years ago I started, okay, now let's give them the K-12 perspective. So not only what do they get here, but what happens when they go to the middle school? This past year when I talked about, and we have an IB school at the high school, they broke into applause. They've been waiting for this. And it was so cool to see, and I thought, oh, there's some former Rockford grads out here. They were very excited to hear that. And so I think even that and sharing those kind of things in those little pockets and those little opportunities that you get to be in front of people is so important. The more we get out on Facebook, the more we do special things that we're doing in our buildings, it's super important. So we're going to increase our social media presence. We're going to share where we can and really scream the theme, as they say at Northwest Suburban, as much as we can. So those are our 5 goals. Again, you've heard a lot of some of these before. It is that continuous improvement, and we continue to work hard and hopefully take it up to that next level. So,
Thank you. Any questions? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda.
All right, next, probably going along the same theme, it looks like, with building goals, call upon our new middle school principal, Mr. Borcheka.
All right. First and foremost, good evening, Board, Superintendent Dean. I just want to begin with gratitude in this amazing space. I love the fact that as a new principal, I can share a space with both the district office and the board, and look forward to continued partnership in that. It turned out amazing. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you a little bit about the middle school site improvement goals. Thank you. Here for, there we go, for the coming school year. And I would echo what Principal Nyhus said, that I just so appreciate the district administrative team and the partnership to really systemically align these things with what we know is what we know works and best practice, as well as building on the great work that has been previously done. So walking you through our goal number 1 as we aim to improve our educational programs, really spending this year at the middle school level to participate in a process where we look at from all different angles, magnet analysis to redetermine key priorities in our STEM environmental approach. So more specifically what that means is making certain that if any one of our staff members were to be approached by any community member, that we have the same answer in key vocabulary and common vision, because my experiences have taught me well that there's nothing more influential or powerful than a bunch of educators with a common vision. And so that's really kind of an analysis of that. And then with that is really dive into our deep connection with Northwest Suburban and Magnet Schools of America as part of that process. And then ultimately that lays a great foundation for integrating some of those STEM themes into our curriculum. So that's going to be our focus for goal number 1. As we go into goal number 2, it's really looking through a site-specific lens. I love the fact that I see people outside all the time, and that's not even during fire drills. Like, just as standard, people are outside at this place, and I love it. But with that, as we look at aligning and developing proactive training for increased safety and security, it's really, our goal number 2 is looking at collaboratively creating ALICE protocols for what is best practice in situations where we are holding class outside of our traditional school building. So really putting pen to paper on that process to make sure that we are safe both in and out of our spaces, as we have 4 outdoor classrooms and a lot of really amazing things that this board has led the way through the past to give our kids that opportunity. And then making sure we have common communication practices in the event that we were to have an Alice incident or an incident that would push us into Alice protocols. And then practicing. Students can do anything, but they need to be trained. And so that's where we need to be able to kind of have some intentional drills where we're having students think for themselves, be put in those outdoor situations that will happen afterwards. And then, as Principal Naihu said, our reunification coming up shortly. Third goal, as we look to this school year, I had the great privilege of this morning telling my 8th grade student council leaders that they would one day step before you and I would show them off to you. And I had 3 very excited faces and one "you serious" face. So we have amazing leadership in this building, and we are blessed by it. So goal 3 is really looking at building supports for our students through kind of developing leadership both with staff and with students, and create a sense of belonging. So when we say belonging, I think it's important we think of that as a relational or social construct, but understanding that is foundational to academic belonging, and have kids being able to understand that having high expectations for themselves, and when they enter the space, that's a place they belong, and they ought to have those high expectations. So as we build that, it's really building intentional infrastructure around active listening, students and staff. So what that looks like for students, we had 50 kids apply for student council. There's like towns that are smaller than that in the state of Minnesota. So we are blessed by students who have a hunger to lead, and I've made a promise that every one of them would have an opportunity, even those who didn't make student council, to have a formal leadership role at some point. So through those student leadership opportunities, it's really about active listening, understanding the learner's perspective, understanding what does a culture of kindness look like to them, what does a welcoming culture look like, and as we have students that relate to that learning process, just being a listener and taking action on what they share. In turn, similar with the staff, where they've taken on more of a building management, staff development, curricular programs, and will one day, as we get into the year, take on a strategic planning role and have a building leadership with representatives from all different parts of our building, really have a say in an active role in leading. One of the very first thing, and sometimes people make fun of it, one of the very first things I did as I took the plaque outside my wall that said principal, and I wrote in a Sharpie. Some people say it's like 5th grade handwriting. It's debatable, but I wrote leader of leaders. And so far my building leadership team and my student council have really answered that bell of they are leading along the way, and that's what I've challenged them, and they have answered that call. Goal number 4 is really about strengthening our instructional practices, processes, curriculum, and assessment. Specifically what that looks like is having all teachers identify power standards and being crystal clear on how that connects standard language to summative assessment reporting. So laying that solid foundation so that that good work can be done, and that shows up when somebody's looking at us from a maintenance or a potential student coming into our spot, that they know exactly what those essential standards are going to be. And then to echo what both Rob and Brenda have said regarding curriculum mapping along the way, and then explore a common syllabi that we could potentially use just for transparency, clarity, both in the middle school in a similar format to the high school as well. Last but not least, to improve parent, community, staff engagement, it's really focusing a framework around this greenhouse lot that I am so fortunate that so many people cared an awful lot about to create, and I feel like I'm a kid in the candy store a little bit. So the heart of this goal is really to do 2 things. One, to define out what it means from a curricular standpoint. So if I have a parent tutor and they ask, how do you use that in a curriculum, I can have them, here's a piece of paper of exactly how it's used throughout the middle school experience. And then on top of it, looking at that lot as a bigger picture of what are opportunities, because it's bigger than just us, of how can we invite our community members, our parents, to be, and all of our stakeholders to kind of have a stake in that, and specifically looking at those garden beds of how can we potentially leverage that as community space, and so inviting some community input into that. And then the biggest thing when we look at the greenhouse lens, a lens of sustainability. There was a lot of sacrifice that has gone into that, so being mindful with how that can happen to honor the sacrifice of so many. That is really kind of an overview of the middle school goals for the year. And thank you for the opportunity to share them with you.
Thank you. Ms. Fresca.
Thank you. That was a nice presentation. I just have a clarification for the D, strengthening instructional practices, processes, curriculum, and assessment. You mentioned summative assessments. Considering a balanced assessment system, would you also say, without it being explicitly written, that that would take in some formative assessment also, so that students can adjust their learning necessary, because especially at the middle school level, students are really able to have some accountability for their learning.
Yes, absolutely. I think when we talk about kind of backwards designing, we know that formative works and is our main focus on most every assessment, because obviously that's the ability to respond to the student's needs. But really the goal of making sure we're connected on the summative level, because then you can only scale it to the formative. I would expect the formative to align with the summative and be in line with standards and power standards. Good question.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next moving on to our high school principal report, Mr. Menard.
Good evening, School Board, Superintendent Dean. I'm happy to talk about the high school improvement plan for 22-23, and you're going to hear some repetition here. And I'm just not clicking the right buttons. There we go. In our 5 goals moving forward for each strategic direction. So The first goal that we have is surrounding improving our educational programs and partnerships. And so our goal is that all of our teachers will be able to identify primary and secondary resources and experts used in each unit to help deliver quality, relevant instruction. What this really gets at is climbing out of a pandemic, now that we can fully engage our students and our new curriculum with the full implementation of IB across all 4 grades for the first time. In what ways are we strengthening that instruction and really reaching out into experts in their field, secondary resources, and any other sort of relevant learning activities that we can provide students with hands-on, engaging instruction where they can be active learners. And what this really also does is it helps our departments see where they can have some of the most relevant course opportunities in terms of electives, in terms of pathways to graduation that gets them ready for perhaps it's an IB career pathway, or perhaps it's a cluster of electives that they're particularly interested in, so that it makes them a more viable candidate for the workplace or a post-secondary education. The second goal has to do with aligning and developing proactive training and response protocol for increased safety and security. At the high school, I believe that our students are going to have just as much of a stake in that as our staff will. As you heard from my colleagues tonight, we're going to be taking a more active role. And at the high school, we need student leaders to help bolster that effort so that it's an organized effort, and so that we really have some plans. And that's going to take some student input. So I've created a safety and security group of students. I did some shoulder tapping, and we're going to have our first meeting shortly after MEA break in November. And we're going to be talking about some of the drills that we've conducted this year, which have been pretty boilerplate, fire drills, and we've locked the classrooms and kind of your historic types of drills. But what sort of things are our students wondering? What sort of things haven't we practiced that they have questions about? What better ideas do we have when we start talking about having options for different locations that might be safer than others, different routes? What are some holes in the plan that we have that students have thought about or talked about? And how can we practice those things in a way that's going to make them feel safer, and ideally put them in more of a leadership role should we have an emergency response that's necessary. I think it's developmentally appropriate, and I think that we're going to have a great group of students that will provide input on that. So I mentioned we have a student group, did some shoulder tapping, but certainly as students hear about this throughout the year, we would certainly invite them to join in on those groups if they're interested. My hope is that eventually, as this group evolves, that's going to become some sort of a community project for an IB student, either a CAS project or a personal project, something they might have a particular interest in, or something that they've been studying a lot or talking with their family about, or maybe a future in law enforcement, for example. I could see a student really taking off with that as a project. But for now, we're going to involve them and give them voice to that topic. Goal number 3, surrounding improving supports for students and their learning. Our staff and administrators will identify student leaders who will take an active role in fostering a positive school culture and creating a sense of belonging. And our meetings will inform progress and adjustments. So again, some shoulder tapping in our leadership and culture committee, I called it, where we're bringing in some students from each grade level to talk about how's it going? How is the workload in that grade level? How are your teachers? How do you think they communicate with each other? Well, you have 5 tests on Friday? Maybe we should talk about that. And maybe we could figure out a way that we can develop a system where we spread those out. And so I've had some individual talks with students about that topic and some other things. And so this is where we can really, I hope, create some crossroads between student concerns or student ideas to make the student experience better, which of course is one of your core values. And I think it's going to be really important to draw that out of our students. And it's a really, really broad cross-section of students in 9th through 12th grade. And so we try to get the scope of different interests, who maybe they have different academic priorities, different social priorities, so that we can really represent the full experience of the high school and what matters to different types of kids. And so I'm really interested for that meeting to see what sort of ideas they have. This, of course, throughout the year, we'll be taking some polls of students. How are they feeling in school? How is this year going? What are they concerned about? What's going well? And then this committee will be studying those results and taking a look at the data and figuring out, okay, how do we respond to this? And one of the things I challenge all of our students, whether you're interested in the safety or the leadership and culture committee, is find opportunities to lead. And so, you know, the phrase was used that we're ratcheting it up, we're going up to the next level in all of our buildings. And as I told the high school, this is the first opportunity that we have, with me present, to realize what our full capacity is and run for it. And so that's what we're going to try to do this year with a lot of student input. You're actually going to see another bullet point that involves student input. Because I want them to take ownership of the high school of the future as well. Bullet point number 4 has to do with strengthening instructional practices, processes, curriculum, and assessment. And for us, primarily, that's going to be about IB. I mentioned before, for the first time ever, all 4 grades are immersed in IB. 9th and 10th grade, it's infused into the curriculum. 11th and 12th grade is a pathway that students choose. And what we have in our 9th and 10th grade, as far as tasking them, is we want them to double the number of MYP units that they teach. And that's a specific template that teachers have to use, where they're addressing specific learning outcomes, approaches to teaching, and approaches to learning. It's very structured, and it's very dense. And then once they create that, they test it out. So this year, each MYP teacher is prepared or ready to teach 2 full MYP units. And over the course of time, we are responsible to IB to let them know that we are recording that progress for a student in their grade book somehow. What we have decided is that's going to be a side indicator. So in other words, that's not going to be part of their final grade, but it will be indicated in their Infinite Campus grade book. So this is how you have done on these standards in this MYP unit through the eyes of IB, based upon our trained teacher. What's really nice about that, we've had questions about summative and formative assessment, is the name of the game in that progress, in those unit criteria, is that's all formative. And so it starts on day 1, but that grade is fluid up until the last day of the 2nd semester. So it'll be really interesting to say, if you want to get a 7 out of 7, which is very challenging, you're starting at a 2. Okay, well, we've got 7 or 8 months to figure out how we get you from a 2 to a 7. And if you want to, we've got time. So we're really interested in see how that unfolds, especially as they're now developing another 2 units to launch and be ready to teach a total of 4 next year. Additionally, our diploma program teachers are reteaching or teaching again the year 1 program, and for the first time implementing the year 2 program, where we will have a full bevy of assessments. I think we counted today at our pedagogical team meeting, there's 15 days of exams in May. And so we'll be busy, and so will the students, and we'll see how they do. And along the way, we're going to be working on taking a critical look at the data and student performance and retooling and refining year 1 and year 2 curriculum as we move forward. Part of that process is making sure that all of our teachers follow our IB policies as approved last year with fidelity. And one way to do that is ensure that all of them are communicating those policies in the same way. So the high school has a common syllabus. Every teacher passes out an identical syllabus, of course unique to their own content and their own flavor, but within that it's all aligned to IB, and it looks the same across the board, just as their academic experience does now. So we've done a lot of retooling to our technology at the high school, so when you go from one classroom to another, it's a lot more formulaic and a lot more predictable for our students, and we're exposing them to some of the most relevant educational technology. So that's a good experience for them. And bullet 5, improving parent, community, and staff awareness and engagement. I continue to say the hardest thing about IB, besides the assessments, is explaining IB. And so, as a way to galvanize the community, one of the ways that I started with our staff, it was to boil it down to the end product. What do we want our students to represent in terms of quality of character, in terms of the profile of the graduate of a Rockford High School student? What do we want them to be like, right? We want them to be caring, we want them to be thinkers, we want them to be inquirers, open-minded, collaborative. Those are all IB profile traits. So if you take the curriculum away and you take the course selection away and how many DP and CP courses are, I'm already starting to use letters, so I'm losing people. boil it down to what type of person do we want a Rockford High School graduate to be, and that's what we're most interested in. So what we've done in our staff workshop days, and I'm beginning to create the scripts for, is we're going to create videos that involve students and staff members that explain an IB learner profile trait and what that's going to look like at Rockford High School and what we hope that produces for the future. Then we can start to talk to you about, okay, here's how we get there. In an MYP unit, here's a discussion that they have in social studies, and that's how they learn to be caring. In IB biology, we make them design their own lab from the ground up. That's how they get to be inquirers, right? And so in that way, I hope these words come to life, and I hope that that's a bridge to be able to explain to the community, this is what living in IB education looks like. And then, when you're ready, we'll talk about all the acronyms and the tests. And so that's going to be inroads where we're going to invite families in to view the videos, give them guiding questions to chew on throughout the year. We'll launch them through our weekly parent bulletins and other communications as we move forward throughout the year.
Any questions? No? A comment? Could I have a comment?
I was just thinking back on wonderful things there. I was thinking back to the previous conversation we had about MCAs. This is a counter to that. The MCAs are one data point. You just told a story that should be shouted to the rooftops of everything we're bringing to students that makes them more than just one day of MCA testing. And not that, you know, we have to use MCAs, it's a state mandate, but what you just said is kind of a counter to, yeah, we always want to improve academically, I'm not saying that, but look at what else we're doing, so.
Absolutely,
That's just,
both are important.
yes, thank you.
Any other comments specifically for Mr. Renata? No. So what I would, echo that, Beth, and what I would actually say is that every single presentation after Mr. Daniker's tee up this evening from our building principals. So I know Mr. Menard is standing here, but if our building principals wouldn't mind standing for just a minute, Mr. Menard can too, or stay standing, and Mr. Daniker. What I saw tonight was exactly what Beth said. It was bringing together the vision of the strategic imperatives to light through your words and comments tonight. And for me to just sit here and hear it all, like I had a different moment tonight than I've had, I don't know, for a while. And it was really cool. So I just wanted to express my collective gratitude to see this, because while the goals, like the high level strategic direction is the same, how you applied it was at the learning level, it was at the parent need level, it was at the student engagement level, and it was with the magnet theme infused throughout. So I just want to say gratitude for how this all came together tonight, so thank you.
I'll just add one last comment, just for the group, not specific to Mr. Menard. And yes, I love how everything is aligned to the strategic plan, and how you guys started there. That makes that a living thing, right, versus just something that sits on a shelf and collects dust. So thank you for that. I think the going forward, right, this is awesome. So I echo everything Beth and Amy said. And going forward, the question I think is, how do we measure progress against these stated goals? And then bringing that back to this group, I think would be important. I'd love to see future updates where we see the goals and then the measures of that progress on there. So I think that's how we carry this forward, so that it's not just an exercise in goal setting that's done at the beginning of each school year. How do we make it living and report on some metrics to bring back to the board? That would be awesome. And to Mr. Warzek, this is a really nice space, and it's in your building, so I'm hopeful that you'll get lots of extra use out of it, and not just make it not just make it a boardroom. So there's lots of great opportunity for learning to happen here too. So please make use of it. So
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item? All right, moving on to then agenda item 6E, which is our Distinguished School Board Renaissance Award topic. We talked about this a little bit during the work session. Ms. Gordy and Ms. Bloom Mr. Menard, are you also coming up this evening as well? Okay. So, and thank you for the preview that we had at our work session so we could kind of get some questions answered and things like that. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Okay, so earlier during the work session, we presented to the school board to update the criteria for the Distinguished School Board Renaissance Award. I'm not gonna read all this again, but just what we would like to do is to change the,
No, you're good. I was just moving my glasses.
oh, okay. To change the, update the criteria, and we would actually like to change it to recognizing all of our full diploma candidates. We'll have 9 of them this year that'll be graduating. And those students, sorry, I'm gonna skip ahead. Those students, we feel like, take on a significant amount, of work to become a candidate for the full diploma. They won't actually they actually will not find out if they're receiving the full diploma until July. But we feel like it's really important to recognize them in a different way, which we feel like senior awards would be the absolute best place to do that. In addition, you'll also ask to be recognized at graduation. So we've asked for the criteria to be changed, and we're asking for the board to approve that change. Any questions that you want to ask?
Any questions or comments or thoughts? Go ahead, yeah, please, Jessica.
Well, my button isn't working, so I'm just gonna use my voice. So, like I stated earlier, I think it's awesome that we have this award. I think it's important that we are recognizing these kids in the IB program. But again, I think that we can have that, and we can also still have the Distinguished School Board Award. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I know that it can be hard to track that, and maybe we find a better way to do that, I don't know. But I just feel that there's kids that maybe fall in this that don't fall in that very, there's only a few kids that fall in that other, and they need to be recognized for IB, but I think there's kids that fall within the school board, the Distinguished School Board Award as well, that, like we were saying, well-rounded, that are involved, and it's my 2 cents.
Other comments? Jessica, do you have a different recommendation?
Well, like I said, I would like to see, yes, 2, and then when we have a CP, you would also have the CP students as well recognized, because I think absolutely there needs to be an award and they need to be recognized, but I don't see why we would need to get rid of one that also recognizes those kids that fall within that maybe they can't do the IB stuff, but they fall within that, so, my 2 cents.
Okay, any other comments?
Can I ask for
Go, please.
clarification with what Jessica talked about? So would we call them all Distinguished School Board Awards, and then there would be different lanes perhaps?
I have no idea. To me, like, if we didn't act, I don't think we need to even act on it tonight. Like, this could be revisited and discussed at your guys' level and then brought back to the board. That's my thought on it, I guess, because I wouldn't want us making any decision. I think it needs to come to, needs to come from you guys. But as far as the school board award, I would hate to see this one go away.
So,
Yep, please,
so
Mr. Gordon.
what was nice for me was when Brady had brought up asking about the criteria about what a diploma candidate is, that well-rounded, involved in athletics, involved in extracurriculars, fine arts, which encompasses this as well. I would assume that the superintendent, the principal, and all parties had already discussed this, and this is their best effort forward.
you know, I'm sure this isn't just brought by the IB people first, this team.
That is correct. We've
So,
had- Chair Boyce?
You did say.
No, we've had lengthy discussions about repurposing, if you will, the current board award. And the reason why we're bringing it here versus the counseling office making that change is it is the board award. And we wanted to make sure that the board was supportive of the direction that the high school wants to move in terms of recognizing, I mean, for us, I think the board award is that premium award that we give out on senior awards night. And to be a diploma candidate is that highest level of achievement. So it made sense to us that it was the board award that recognized our diploma candidates. And so that's why we came forward with the proposal to kind of repurpose, if you will, the current Renaissance Award. And leaving it, the name the same as the Board of Renaissance Award.
Any other comments or questions? Any other thoughts on Ms. Johnson's feedback? Other than,
Well, to Director Cordy's comment, it's not something that has to be voted on this evening if we wanted to revisit it. But again, the high school has discussed it. They think that repurposing this award would be the right direction. And there has been some complications over the last couple of years, say two, maybe one, for sure. Maybe it was a couple of people in 1 year, but a couple of instances where it was difficult to identify all the students that were eligible for the current award because of the criteria with some of the fine arts participation, that things have changed over the years. And I think Ms. Gordy mentioned that the original award, it's been over 10 years.
Right, we could only go as far back as 2012.
And so when you
That's as
think,
far back as our records go.
and so when you
we
think
got it
about.
in 1996.
Nice. So when you think about what's been added to Minnesota State High School League, because that is the bucket, things have changed. And again, there have been instances where that has not been tracked properly. So for instance, robotics. There was a time that robotics was not a Minnesota State High School League offering, but now it is. So things just morph over the years. And again, we wanted to recognize our diploma candidates with the top award, which for us is the school board award.
And I would say, I think it's open to discussion if we feel like students need to be recognized in a different way. I think what we came to you with is specifically this, so if there's something else that we need to look at, or we feel like students aren't being recognized, we certainly can have a relook at things. But tonight we came, specifically with this.
Mr. Anderson?
I like the proposal. I like the timing of the proposal so that you can advocate this award to the student body as soon as possible. We are an IB school at the high school now. I think that's our identity, right? We embrace that. I think it's properly aligned. I think there are other awards available for the students that may traditionally have fallen into the Renaissance Award bucket. Honoring the athletic awards and the fine arts and whatnot. I don't know all the awards. So, but based on our discussion earlier, there are going to be a lot of people that would traditionally qualify for the, based on the old criteria with the new criteria. So I like that it aligns to our new identity as an IB school, but I recognize and appreciate your comments, Jessica.
So I just want to clarify too, that in the past, we've only had as many as 10 receiving that Distinguished School Board Award, and this year we'll have 9 also falling in that same category.
Thank you.
And how
That's
many
helpful.
diploma candidates?
9.
Yeah.
And next year, and this year we will also be encompassing a career program next year, and we have 4 candidates this year.
So I think the question on the table this evening is, as it relates to the current Distinguished School Board Award, the Renaissance Award, does the board wish to entertain a motion to change the criteria for that particular award, notwithstanding Ms. Johnson's comments about ensuring that, you know, there's maybe there's other things or other ways to consider I think it was 3.5 GPA and six different activities and different things like that, but just to, notwithstanding that, but I think the question upon us tonight is, do we wish to modify the criteria for this particular award to be more in alignment with the pursuit of an IB diploma? I mean, that's really the question. And so I think that's what we need to answer tonight for the district, and if we're ready to answer that question for the district tonight.
One more
Please,
comment.
Ms. Johnson. Yep.
When kids decide to become an IB diploma student, then this award is only those kids, and it isn't. It would then mean that no other kid, rather than having an IB award for those kids, because they did choose that. That's all. I mean, I just think like it really narrows it. And I know we only have 10 kids that get it, but you could have 2 kids within that 10 that didn't do the IB diploma, right? But they did maintain a 3.5, and they did participate in 6 athletics and 6 fine arts, which is difficult to do. So.
And on top of that, I would say, unfortunately, some of that is out of the kids' control, right? Some students get cut from the athletic event or that they would like to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be excluded from this thing, not by their own choosing then also. So, I mean, the child gets to choose, like you said, right? So, but sometimes there's instances where it's out of their control. So I think this provides more an open opportunity for kids to control their own destiny, to receive this award.
So I think the question is, are we ready to do a motion tonight for the district as it relates to this? And the question on the table is, we've got the Distinguished School Board Award that's been a part of this district forever, for a long time. It's what we're hearing from the high school team is, it is the pinnacle award that is awarded. It's the highest of highest honors on senior awards night. And the request is to change the inclusion criteria or the awarding criteria for that award to align with our pursuit of an IB education. Yep, okay. So that's the question tonight.
So let's answer that question, I guess, through the process.
Yep, that would be a motion.
Yeah, I will make a motion to update or to accept the proposed changes to the distinguished award criteria, recommendation of the team in front of us, and what's been proposed. So that's a bad motion, but hopefully you guys get the picture. So the motion is to update the criteria as presented.
Yep,
So,
that is the motion, yes.
yeah, thank you. Terrible motion.
I have a first
Hopefully
by Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Nealand. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion or comment? This time I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay. Okay, we got 5 in favor, 1 opposed. So motion carries as presented. And then I would just add recommendation to just take counsel of the board to ensure that there isn't an inclusion exclusionary, from Ms. Johnson's feedback tonight. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Stay there, Samantha.
All right, stay on up here, Ms. Bloom. Direct admissions. Help us learn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so
this year is the first year of the direct admissions pilot program, and Rockford High School was chosen as a pilot school. So the core belief of the direct admissions program is that every student is college material. So what direct admissions does is it notifies eligible graduating high school seniors that there are colleges that want to partner with them or that are eager to admit them based on their academic record. So it kind of takes away that question of will I get in, or that hesitation to apply, and it tells them like, yes, you are eligible and you can be accepted here. Direct admissions has the potential to reduce equity gaps by providing the college information to all high school students and eliminating their need for extensive college-going knowledge, the process of navigating college. So they kind of do this by using 4 strategies. They promote the college-going culture. They connect students and families and schools with colleges and universities earlier, giving them time to kind of think over their options. It eases that transition from high school to college, and it shows students they have access to the college degrees if they choose to further their education. So eligible students are students that are on track to graduate at this time. There are over 50 Minnesota colleges and universities that are participating, and they categorize the students based on their current GPA into tiers 1 through 6. And that GPA is based off of their junior year GPA at the end of the junior year. And it also looks in some of the tiers at certain grade averages in the core subject areas. So our students have already received this letter indicating that there are colleges and universities that they're proactively admitted to. They completed a survey through Infinite Campus, letting us know if they're interested in hearing more from those colleges. And kind of a perk for them is that all the colleges out there are pre-admitted to. The application fees are waived for the entire school year. So that's pretty exciting for those kids. But I think that's all that I had on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Any questions?
How'd the process go?
It was good. It was smooth. I think I've got a couple in each year they've already accepted, so
Cool. That's awesome.
it's a great program.
This is a great program, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, moving on to item number 7, which is our resolution of acknowledgements of contributions and donations. Turn it over to Superintendent Dean.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. This is the time in the board meeting where I'm humbled by the generosity of our community. As you can see, I don't want to just list everyone, but we had some significant contributions this month. Well over, one contribution was well, the Rocket Boosters, I'll just say it out loud, over $4,600, a significant contribution. We also had the Rockford Education Foundation donate over $800, and I believe that was the bags for the career fair. By the way, if you missed the career fair last week, you missed a great event at the high school. To just an individual, Mr. Thomas, who donated some wood pieces, if you will, to our early childhood program. So again, just a vast array of amounts and what is being donated to our schools. And so just real grateful and thankful, and just a reminder to the board and to the public that when individuals or organizations donate to Rockford area schools, not only are they recognized, of course, at the board meeting, but we also send them a letter of acknowledgement, and that it's documentation that they could actually use for tax purposes. So they do get something from Rockford area schools acknowledging the contribution. But again, just always amazed at the generosity of our community.
Thank you. Couldn't agree more. With that, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the resolution of acknowledgement of contributions and donations as presented.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. I have a first and a second. First by Ms. Nealon, second by Mr. Anderson. Any further comment or discussion? All right, this is a resolution, so I'll call for a roll call vote. Ms. Johnson? Aye. Ms. Praska?
Aye.
Mr. Gordy?
Aye.
Ms. Nealon?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
And me, Amy Edwards, aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you to our generous community. And again, the other thing that I'll notice on here is there's some individual donations, but there's also like the big group donations, which is like everybody's fingerprints on those, so that's always fun to see, you know, so anyway. All right, next, moving on to our facilities update, call upon our Director of Buildings and
You need to do the roll call vote.
Oh, what?
Yes,
I did.
she did.
Oh, yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
I'm
Come
staring
on.
at this computer screen too much.
It's okay, Brady. Yeah, moving on to number 8A. Thank you for the cross-check, though. Our facilities update with Mr. Lure, our Director of Building and Grounds.
Thank you. You're stuck with me, both Chris and Ryan from ICS. Left me hanging tonight. I'm gonna do my best with this. I still have numbness in my right fingers, so I'm gonna do it. Yeah, maybe you should do it. I might be talking about teaching to learn or something. So just, we talked about this earlier, abatement bond projects at a glance. We are making really good progress, but we're also really getting close under the gun with finishing based on asphalt. Once the asphalt companies close, we're in trouble. So, but they usually are staying open until Thanksgiving. But East High School bus loop, they're just going like gangbusters. They got all the sewer installed, underground storage tanks installed, electrical's getting done. They did all the curb work like half of Thursday and Friday, or completely around the whole bus loop. They got a little bit to finish up around there. They started on the south parking lot up in front of the building. And I know a comment was made earlier that came out of the blue, and I agree, because I wasn't even given the heads up. I come around the corner one morning and noticed that they started working on it, and I didn't know that they were gonna do that, and I would have communicated that a little bit better, but, so that was kind of under the gun. Keep in mind, some of these projects are gonna get really moving fast because of asphalt and because of the cold weather. But I will communicate as soon as I hear more, and I usually talk to the general contractor maybe 2-3 times a day just for updates, visit the site. So the middle school is my understanding is supposed to be poured, or supposed to be at the first coat of asphalt tomorrow. They were going to be on course last week as they were doing the city project, but I guess there's a difference between oils and asphalt between the road and our bus loops, so they had to change back to oil, a different oil at the asphalt company because our buses are a little bit heavier, and that held us up a week. The stairs are poured, light bases are poured. Basically, everything at the middle school is coming to a close. When the second coat of asphalt is going to be put on, I hope is sooner than later. Again, the company that they are using is a large company, and they have a lot of projects going on, so they're fitting us in as we go. So the next coat is the 24th. Could be sooner than that, and that would finish up most of the main part of the middle school where we could start using the bus loop. One thing that we did a little different at the bus loop, or with that project, was where we installed the ADA compliant S-curve asphalt or sidewalk. That was all called for sod. We're gonna sod that whole area. And we talked, me and Paul, Principal Paul Lazeka and Jamie Madsen talked a little bit about turning that into prairie grass. So instead of putting sod there, sod will die, turn to weeds. We decided to put prairie grass in there. We will get a kickback a little bit, extra money from taking out the sod portion of it and adding prairie grass. It also takes away from our mowing, and it also adds, as Mr. Wazaka said, a lane for the kids to walk up and down, and as the prairie grass grows, an opportunity for them to learn the next few years as it grows, the plantings and stuff. So we went from the upper parking lot all the way up to that area where we put a path in for Safe Routes to Schools is all gonna be prairie grass now, which I think in a year or two after it gets established is gonna look pretty cool. Next one, please. Here's some pictures of the projects that's going on. It took a while for them to do the stairwells on the new entrance for the stairwells down on that south side of the building. They're finishing up the grading, the light poles. The handrails are coming. I mean, once again, they've been ordered, but it's that wait and time backlog again, so we may have to put up like a temporary handrail. They were ordered weeks ago and they still haven't come yet. So we may have to put up like a handrail that gets us to that part. Next one. Thanks, Krista. This is just another photos of the middle school, light poles before the concrete's done, curbs in, big sidewalk where the buses are gonna be dropped off for the kids. Really looks nice. If you haven't been up there, it's really making good progress. Like I said, in between asphalt coats, we just decided not to move people back and forth, using the parking lot, then not using the parking lot, using it, and then, so we're gonna wait till we're completely done, and then they're just gonna make one big move. My understanding, even with the next one, this one shows the East High School burying some storm sewer tile, good drainage, and again, they just get so much dirt work and stuff done so quickly. It's amazing to see that. I haven't seen a company move that fast before, so they're a good big company to work for, or to work with. This is that big storage drainage system that we had to install. Everything, I shouldn't say everything, 90% of it's gonna go filter through this system. And what it is big pipes that have holes in them. They're surrounded by rock and fabric that the water will drain in there and filtration down into the ground. There is an overflow system on the far end that probably in 150 years will never come out the other end. This system is supposed to take hundreds of gallons a minute, so.
What's the lifespan of this bad boy? I mean, I've seen that thing up there. It's huge and
It's gonna be there.
intense.
It'll be, you and I will be like in a nursing home.
Okay,
Maybe
all right.
It's all galvanized, it's gonna be there for a long time.
Yeah, it's a big investment. It's big. This is a big system.
It is a big thing. So we need to install that so we didn't have to involve with the watershed department and everything, and make our pond across the road bigger and everything else. So that's kind of why we had to install that one. But it was a big hole. Next. We had to lower, so this is kind of a weird story. This line here is the loop, a water loop that goes around the building, and it supplies all of our fire hydrants. And that portion of the fire hydrant loop was too high to be able to put in enough asphalt and ground for our buses to drive on without it freezing. The problem is we couldn't find the shut-offs for this loop of water. I mean, we looked at as-bills and everything, and we could not find them. And we looked, me and Chris looked for them for 3 hours where they're supposed to be. We found one shut-off about 1.5 feet in the sod underground, which was the one closest to the main entrance. And then we shut off the other one that we thought was the second one to shut the water off around the loop and keep water coming to the elementary. We shut that one off, and then we got a call and say, hey, we lost pressure in the elementary school, so we turned that back on quick. So the other one we couldn't find either. So we're looking all over the place, and we have the metal detector, and we found that one next to the water shut off for the elementary about 2 feet over, in the asphalt down 2 feet. So this company had to dig it up, cut out the asphalt, shut the pipe off, and they actually fixed it so it's now ground level. To mine, it just fathoms me why someone would cover main water shut off valves like that. So we found them, we got them marked, and we're good, but it was really weird. Sad thing about it is they turned the water off, and there's no water. So the last person must have not generated too much. On the budget wise, as you know, we had about $3 million for abatement bonds. We've spent $907,000. We still got some bills coming in because we don't get charged until most of the projects get done. We still are on track for spending about $2 million more. Contingency plan, we still have about $90,000 extra. We don't foresee, again, because most of the earth has been moved right now, and that's where you find the unknown, and that's where you plan for stuff like that. We don't foresee anything eating up our contingency that much. So we'll end with somewhat of a decent under budget plan unless something comes out of the weeds. One thing I know we do need to do is look at our wood chip problem in our playground. We may need a little bit of contingency plan to change something out there.
I asked the question in the work session.
I'm laying under the woods on that one.
I'll just ask, and you basically said it. It looks like we're on track to stay within budget for this particular project.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are. We're doing good. Like I said, when you start moving earth is where the nightmares come. And we moved all the dirt we needed to move and didn't find any skeletons, so we're good. We didn't find any new old cars or anything like that, so you'd be surprised when you build schools, just in the olden days, they just dug a hole and buried stuff. And we could have ran into a lot of junk. So it's good we didn't. So yeah, we're doing good. Abatement bonds, we're looking for closer to completion. Knock on wood, the next few weeks, we're gonna be looking in good shape. LTFM projects, we talked about a little bit of it. We're in the process of designing the roofing projects. We have to get them designed soon, get them out for bid soon to make sure that we get the product for doing some roofing projects at the elementary and some of the other projects that we're looking at doing. And I know the architect is working hard on getting those designs done, and so we get them out for bid. And again, that stuff has to come to board approval for bidding and all that stuff, and design and all that. So that's going to be coming soon, probably in the next couple board meetings, or at least the next board meeting, so we can get stuff ordered to make sure it's here. RCC flooring, I know we were supposed to have some more information to you in October. And again, the thing we're waiting on is the company that we're gonna do some core boring with is really swamped with all these other construction projects going on that they test the concrete to make sure that the concrete is solid enough, and they're testing it for us and many other companies. So they kind of put this pouring on the back burner a little bit. We expect them to be here in the next couple of weeks to do that, and then we can get some more information for you that get the design and stuff put together. Lease levy capital bond projects. That's another thing we just started talking about. We actually had the last week, we had a couple of meetings, or 3 meetings, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and we went to the raw board meeting, and didn't really talk about any concepts. We were looking more for what their needs and wants were. And we got some good information from all 3 groups. We were a little shy on external stakeholders, and I think I got a couple calls from different people that it was one of the last football games they had that night, so there's a lot of the ones that we were looking at for stakeholders from previous meetings we had, where coaches had the kids were playing. So I think we'll end up having one more so we can get some more input. But I can tell you, the number one thing that seemed, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, probably supposed to, but storage was huge. I mean, just, they talk about storage. So, that'll be on the list, and then we have to bring information back to you guys of what we kind of decide or what we're thinking on.
For quick
yes.
question, for external stakeholder involvement, did you get any feedback on optimal timing for putting a new floor into the RCC?
We want to look at,
I know there's tournaments that generate revenue for the programs and all that sort of stuff.
In fact, on the RCC flooring that said to install winter of 2023, and I said, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, the winter's,
No, we're not
so
tearing
much
the
going
floor
on in the
down.
winter.
We're gonna be putting in the floor, when we decide what floor we're putting in and how we're fixing it, in July when it's 150 degrees out and people can work outside.
Yep.
Yeah, when it's getting used
Cool.
a little bit. That's what we're doing. Yeah, we're
Thank
not
you.
tearing that up now.
Yep.
We will make sure, I'll make sure that it is, where we peel it back and take samples and all that other stuff. I'm gonna look at the company and have them come in and see if they can set up a tape, see if they can seal it up a little bit with some sealant. Because we've got some areas that we tore up and stuff. So, yeah, we'll get that.
Cool.
Yeah, we're not doing that anytime soon until next summer.
Thank you, Jim.
One of the things under capital facilities is secured entrances. We have our architect working on that right now. So we can get that designed, so we can get, again, if we get approval to move forward with capital bonds and lease levy stuff from the board, that we're ready to go so we can get stuff ordered. Because, again, it's weeks before we get, months before we get stuff. So that'll be, timeline-wise, that'll be coming pretty quick. And again, all that funding source has to be approved by you guys. So I won't be giving that demonstration or input, because that's done by professionals. LTFM bonding stuff, or LTFM projects, we're still working on them. We're looking at replacing some doors here. They were supposed to be here last week, they haven't showed up, and we were supposed to replace like 25 doors over MEA, and he hasn't received them yet. And that makes it 32 weeks since I ordered them. So now we're looking at Christmas maybe, so, but he's supposed to touch base with me in the next couple of days. It's frustrating, but you can't build a house without doors and windows. Main part. Next. I think this is it. Just kind of planning, informational gathering. We had stakeholder, we're designing, we got our architect throwing things together, ideas, working on roofs, working on secure entrances. We're hoping if everything works out that we can work on those this winter as long as we get product. November, we'll bring some information back to the school board on, different ideas and different concepts and everything like that. And then maybe a final resolution in December on if we move forward with more different funding and stuff like that. So I think that pretty well covers the whole thing. Yeah. Any questions?
Any questions?
Cool.
No. Can you just zip back to the timeline? I just want to reinforce that timeline. We talked about this a little bit in our facilities committee meeting, just for the board. This is a big deal, the timeline right here. So, stakeholder meetings, stakeholder conversations about bigger picture facilities planning, as Mr. Lure mentioned, is happening now. November, we'll be talking, and this is all around how do we create more usable space in the middle school? Do we need to build more space in the community center? Like, what does that look like? That's this conversation that we'll be having over the next 6 weeks, with a recommendation to come back November with that concept design. Once we talk about, so it's like next month. So then as we talk about that concept design, then we also will be acting on how we're gonna fund it, and that's in December. So I wanted to pause for a minute, like there are big decisions coming up. So my recommendation is to, feel free to reach out to Superintendent Dean if you have questions about some of the facilities planning. Feel free to, have some conversations. Again, as we're talking about with other community members, we're trying to get that input and insight as well. Because the goal is that this is gonna be at least the next part of our, this is gonna be, on and on and on, right? Like this is one step of many, right? But the goal is that whatever our next move is that it's not just a quick Band-Aid little move, but it's a big enough move to create some capacity, some learning space, some other things too. So, and staying within a fiscally responsible way. So that's the balance. And so I wanted to underline big decisions coming to the board over the next 60 days. Mr. Gordy, is there anything else you'd add from a facility member perspective?
I don't believe so. I think the pre-work before we, nope, nothing to add. We're good.
Yeah, thank you.
Able to move forward.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Otherwise, great update. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right, next, moving on to item number 8B. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Dean. This is assurance of compliance with state and federal law prohibiting discrimination.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. Yes, this is an action item. The assurance of compliance with state and federal laws prohibiting discrimination is an action item that comes before the board every year. It is our assurance that the federal and state laws that are listed are posted in our buildings as it relates to things like age discrimination or Americans with Disabilities Act, equal opportunity employment, fair housing, all of those state and federal compliance laws that they're posted in an appropriate place in each of our buildings. And so this is an action item, and again, it's something that has come before the board each and every October.
And then just as a reminder, the approval of the assurance of compliance is, as Superintendent Dean said, is recommended, and our HR director will sign it and submit it on behalf of the district once board action is taken. With that, I would entertain a motion.
Eric Gordy, make a motion to approve the assurance of compliance with state and federal law prohibiting discrimination.
I have a first by Mr. Gordy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Praska. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion or comment? Any no further discussion or comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, next, moving on to item number 8C, which is our policy update, second reading, and it is a packet. So thank you to the district, and I know Jessica has had to do fingerprints on like a lot of this too, so thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Superintendent Dean.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. Yes, the slate of policies before you are presented as a second reading, and I would like to give a shout out to Director Johnson. Director Jessica Johnson has been a tremendous asset on the policy committee, not just looking at the policy that we talked about earlier, but just keeping us reviewing the current policies and providing any feedback. It is thick in terms of the number of pages, but again, Jessica has done a tremendous job at making sure that they've been reviewed and just looked at for content. And so again, this is the second read, there is a slate, and I know the board has had an opportunity to review them during the first read, and now here we are in the second read. So this is an action item to vote on a resolution to adopt the new policies.
Thank you. Any questions before we proceed with business? Again, this is a second read, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the policy updates as stated in the packet.
Thank you. I have a first by Ms. Johnson. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Cordy. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion or comment? All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, carries unanimously. Thank you. So now we're moving into board and superintendent updates and announcements. At this time, if there are people that wish to depart from the district team, you're welcome to depart. We won't call upon you for anything else this evening. You're, of course, welcome to stay. So moving on to item number 9A, we will be holding a special meeting to canvass the election. Do we have a proposed date at this point in time? And our packet is TBD.
It is TBD because we didn't want to schedule that for the board.
Okay.
There is some guidelines around it. It has to be 3 days after the election, but then within 10 days after that. And unfortunately, our board meeting, the last date in which we can take action on this is the 18th, which is a Friday, and our board meeting, our regular board meeting is the very next Monday. So unfortunately, we cannot postpone this action to a regular board meeting. We have to canvass the election results within the guidelines set by the state of Minnesota.
Normal. This is normal. This has happened every single election, no matter what. We don't have a choice. It's what we have to do.
Yep.
So the dates are November 14th through 18th, and again, we did not want to make a decision for the board. Wondering what your thoughts are. My understanding is that, and I know you've done it many times, and my understanding is that we've scheduled it, before school in the morning at 7 to 8 a.m., and we've scheduled it during the noon hour, and so really just looking for your input.
Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
I mean, we've had it on Friday, like it'd be the 11th, Friday the 11th at 7 a.m. and we're done at 7:05.
We can't do Friday the 11th because it's Veterans Day.
So it's a holiday, so we can't, right? But I'm just saying, we have done that, like it's that Friday, we have done that, and it's been at 7 in the morning, and we're done at 7:05. I mean, it's a quick, come in, procedural, we have to do it by state law, we have to, so we don't have an option. It is very quick.
Can I toss out then 14th?
14th, 7 a.m.
Yep.
I'd prefer it to be the 18th. I'll be out of town pretty much the first 3 weeks in November. I will be here the 18th.
You will be back on the 18th.
Assuming that Malta gets me back.
Ooh, yeah, I
That's fine. I was just throwing out dates to get the
that works.
conversation
I'm
started.
out too.
The 18th
Monday.
works? 18th.
18th works, I'm back in the state yet.
18th.
I'm teaching in Delano, I just gotta be out over there around 7:30ish, so
Same.
it's all good.
Motion's forward.
Yes,
Jenny?
I will.
So we're coalescing around the date of the 18th. I believe I've heard a time of 7 a.m. Just cross-checking. Is that a good thing? Ms. Nealon does not appreciate the 7 a.m. time, but it looks at her face.
We had to put that into words because
But
you
it's
get that
here,
thing.
it's like 2 blocks, is it? Coming in my jammies.
You totally can. It's just fine. It's fine.
I wish we could do it virtual.
Director Edwards?
All right, yes?
Thank you for mentioning that. Director Johnson, this would be an in-person meeting,
Yes.
so
Yes.
just to make sure the board is aware.
Mhm.
The COVID protocols for remote
Yeah, all that
distance
stuff's
meetings
done.
are
Yeah.
there.
So it would be in this room.
We'll be in this room
or
at
you can have
whatever
it-
date and time we decide.
Just do it.
The conference room in the district office, you can do it there too. That's where we've had it in the past too, so.
We've got this beautiful space.
Your choice.
Wherever you want to have it.
Okay, so I'm hearing the 18th of November, I'm hearing 7 a.m. Okay, I am hearing 7 a.m. I'm hearing in this room, so the board room of the district at the middle school. All right. Sounds
And
good.
again, just one last comment, Director Edwards, if something were to go amiss,
Mhm.
we would still have to meet at some point during that day.
On the 18th, no
On
matter
the
what.
18th,
Yeah, that's
that's
fine
the
with
last
me.
day.
Yeah.
And
So-
we need quorum, so 4 people have to
Mhm.
show up. So that's the other thing. So I would, just to codify it for the record, I would entertain a motion just to show that we've. Okay.
I don't think we have to, we just have
Are
to
you
set,
sure?
we just have to
So
set,
cool?
we just, it's
Okay,
anything.
all right.
we just-
I just
we
want to make
set it.
sure
Yeah,
for
no,
the
we don't
record,
have
so
to.
for the record, we're noting that that's the
No.
date's been set,
I'll
it's
send
new
you
date,
something.
okay?
And then she'll send out the.
That sounds
7
fine.
a.m.
No.
Just-
Friday
I
the
just-
18th.
18th,
Sometimes
7 o'clock.
motions help to codify action. Okay, that's fine. Next, work session is Monday, November 21st, 5:30 p.m. in this boardroom. And then regular meeting of the Board of Education is the 21st at 6:30, also in this boardroom. Any other questions related to the schedule or any other issues related to the schedule? And then I'm looking at the clerk to validate that those are the dates as perfect. All right, can we move on to item number 9B, which is our board and committee updates? And we'll start with Ms. Nealon.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Since the last time we've met, I am still volunteering with Safe Routes to School a few times a week, probably 3, 4, or 5 times a week, just up at the corner of 55 and Maple Street, helping our kiddos get safely across the highway. We're making initiatives to add the new blinky in the back of the middle school here across 33 with the new path. That's going to be awesome. On National Walk to School Day, we had a lot of interest in that, especially in the back here across 33. So I'm glad things are rolling in the direction of getting them across safer right now. I attended the Meet the Candidates Chamber meeting. That was interesting, and I'm glad I went. This opened my eyes to, all of the, not only the school board candidates, but also the city officials that we are looking to elect. So I also attended the Riverworks Steak Fry just a couple of days ago, and that was a great event, and it was great to see what, how many, it's everybody in our community just giving back to our community, and I just love it. That's my favorite kind of things to go to. That's about all I have. I've got more committee meetings being scheduled right now for the end of this month, so I'll have a more extensive list in November.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
As usual, my list of updates is not too extensive. I'd like to thank Ms. Nealon for attending the chamber meeting in my absence.
Actually, in my absence.
Yeah,
and
it was
his
a
absence,
chain
and
of
then-
events, so thank you.
But Jessica was there too, so.
Oh, wonderful.
We had it covered.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, and
Would
of
love to be
course.
there. I just, yeah, tough to attend in California. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Ms. Prescott.
My list is also very short because I've been traveling the 4 corners of the country in the last month. So I do thank you to the wonderful other directors on this board to go to meetings in my absence.
Thank you. Mr. Birdie?
Sure. Meet the candidates, right? Chamber meeting, that was a blast. A very difficult question. opposed to me?
What's your name?
No. Do I know where Oshkosh is?
Where in Wisconsin?
That is true. Negotiations committee meetings. I met with Chuck and Mike as well to come up with the next proposal, which I think I emailed to y'all the other day. So we're in good shape there, I hope. I say facilities committees possibly, and then just working with Mr. Pratt here and there, driving golf carts and announcing for soccer games and football stuff and, yeah, that fun stuff.
Can I get a ride this Friday?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's
Friday.
see, was there anything else?
Don't we have a game?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And it's in Howard Lake, so that's a
Oh,
long
great.
go-kart, or
Can I get a ride there too?
You can ride with me. Well, you can ride with my daughter, she's gone, I'm not.
I mean, that is the closest one. We could take the golf cart to it,
Yeah.
right?
It isn't that far.
Yeah.
Bundle up.
Right?
We are digressing real
Yeah,
fast
so
here.
making sure that's all in, negotiations and sports, athletics, yep, all good. That's enough.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
All right, so negotiations, Masico, 2 policy meetings with Rhonda and prepping for all of that. I went to meet the candidates. I went to the C general membership meeting for Beth in September. Gosh. Oh, I think that's it. Went through my calendar and that's things that jumped out at me, so.
Thank you. And just for me, just doing the board prep meeting with Superintendent Dean and getting this all put together. And then also just the facilities committees here and there. So as you can see, that work is really, I think, progressing pretty well. And then just spent a little bit of time doing some volunteerism in some of our outdoor spaces with the district, so that was been fun too. Yeah, those are my updates.
Beth, did you do board rep? I just want to make sure that I know.
No, don't call me. I was there for
Okay.
like 10 minutes.
All right,
Barely,
that's good.
so.
I'll just make sure it's not enough.
All right, good. Well, then I'll turn it over to Superintendent Dean.
Well, no. Thank you, Chair Edwards. In terms of this month, since our last board meeting, of course, I've attended my standing committee meetings, which are, AMSD, the facility meetings. I continue to meet on Tuesday mornings with Jim and Ryan from ICF to discuss long-term facility maintenance. Continue to participate in the Northwest Suburban meetings, the Masico meetings, and continuing to negotiate with the principals. Oh, I'm sorry, not the principals at this point, with 284 and the principals, actually both. 284 has been a little bit more active. Our principals have been busy getting their buildings up and running and getting through homecoming week. And that was going to be my next item to bring forward, that we had a successful homecoming week in all 3 buildings. I'm surprised none of the principals mentioned it, but it has been, we have had homecoming since our last board meeting, but it really was a great homecoming week. In addition to kind of the standard items, attended the Carol Evans Sunrise Show broadcast, which was just super fun. It's amazing how much energy people have at 6 a.m. in the morning. I just don't even understand that. But I actually left there, which was here, and attended the C meeting in St. Paul an hour later and didn't know there was a remote option because I was here. I'm thinking, I could have just stayed in Rockford. But I did attend the C meeting, and that's always a good meeting to attend because it has, as we saw on the slide, it's also associated with the rural,
MRE.
yes, thank you.
MREA.
Well, when you go to university,
MREA.
they give you a good meal at least.
And
yeah.
well, I didn't stay for the meal item because we had to get
Because she
back.
had
I had
it
to
back
get back.
here.
So anyhow, but that's okay. Also attending some Region 6 Superintendent Training Series. It's Region 6 superintendents have, we just got together and decided what are those things that are top of mind for us, and we're just doing some internal training of each other. And so that was a really good meeting. The first topic of conversation just a few weeks ago was pending most of us having turnover on our boards. How do you onboard a new board member? So I took copious notes and we'll be using those. I'm continuing to participate on the Minnesota State High School League Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Attended a law conference hosted by Ratliff, Brozick, and Maloney, which are always good. The law is always changing, and so we're making sure that we're staying on top of any nuances as it relates to the law. Been working really closely with the principals on safety and security, and our exercise that we will be participating in on Wednesday as it relates to practicing our evacuation and unification process. And I won't talk any more about that. You'll hear more about that. Attended the Wright County Wright County Conference Fall Administrative Meeting. Also attended the Meet the Candidates Chamber Forum, which was a good opportunity to not just meet the candidates that were running for school board, but also the candidates that are running for city council for the city of Rockford and the city of Greenfield. And I think all of the candidates were there except one from
The school board.
There's a proxy
Oh,
vote.
that was hilarious.
I had a highly distinguished proxy.
I know, she did a great job.
was not the one. I thought we were missing somebody from either Greenfield or Rockford.
Oh, that's
So
so
maybe not, but that was good. Also, I've been meeting. Director Nealon mentioned Blinky, which is a pedestrian crossing light. Have also been meeting with city council members to talk about safe routes to school and how we can make Blinky happen on the other side of the middle school here. We've talked a lot about the facility meetings, held 3 facility meetings since our last board meeting with both internal and external stakeholders, and it sounds like we will have at least one more to invite individuals that we might have missed or any other individuals who have stepped forward and have expressed an interest. I mentioned briefly that last Friday there was a career fair at the high school. It was phenomenal. What I think was interesting was how many booths were manned by parents in our community that own small businesses, that just a variety of different industries, whether it was realtor or building, construction, plumbing, electrical. It was very well attended. We had colleges and universities in attendance, and the kids appeared to be really engaged. I mean, I've been to those type of events before where the kids just kind of stand around and talk to each other. This was one where the kids were actually going to the tables and engaging with the presenters. So I don't know if the high school kind of prepped the kids a little bit better to engage with the in the different booths, but it was clearly it was a good event and very well attended. Career fair, and then I attended the Riverworks fundraiser just this past Saturday, which those folks know how to grill a steak. So it was a great event. And that's my update.
Awesome.
Hey Rod, I got a question for you. Paul talked about creating videos of traits with the IB program, and Brady was talking about how do we keep and make sure. It was a year ago that we did an IB video with a big video. Where are we with that? Because I don't think it's. There's a really big video production company that came in and made a. Where are we with doing anything with that?
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we were talking about it earlier this week even.
Because it triggered when he said something.
Yes, that it's not on the website yet, so we have to follow up on that. It should be out there.
We shared it with our district staff. Actually, it was the end of last year, it was June. I think it was the end of the year program. But you're absolutely right, and we just thought about that just this week, that where is that video? And so we'll have to make sure that we get it from the high school and put it on the website.
And then, and then Brenda talked about MTSS with Fidelity. Are you all still participating in the pilot MTSS program with Gene Duffy with MDE? Do you know?
Wow.
Or is that? That's okay. We can.
You know, yes, I was, but I don't remember seeing a meeting on a calendar this year. Are you talking about Carrie?
Yeah, with so the pilot MTSS, Minnesota MTSS.
Yes, to answer your question directly, we are.
Yeah, okay. And then PBIS was interesting too. I mean, are we doing that as site teams and all of that? Are we implementing PBIS as implemented, or is it just flavors of it?
Well, at this point, we're focusing more on MTSS and have not put as much energy into PBIS at this point.
I was just wondering, because she said the word, and I just was.
And some people conflate the two of them, but we're really looking at MTSS and providing those multiple tiers level of support for students. And as you can see by our data, we need to really ratchet up the supports that we're providing for kids and
just wondering
the program.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's where I think the fidelity piece comes in, because that's really definitely tier one, you know, like we're at the tier one stuff, yeah.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Mm-hmm. So that's my report, Chair.
You're busy.
Thank you. All right. With that, we've got one final agenda item. Item number 10, which is an item to adjourn. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I have a first from Ms. Praska. Do I have a second? Second. Second from Ms. Johnson. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion or comment? Any no further discussion or comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned 9:02 p.m. Thank you all.
All I heard was 2.
9:02.
Yeah, what?
Nothing on my end
So
today.
we have a burner at home. My husband and my sister.
Awesome.
Amy, don't go anywhere.
Get a cast iron pan.
There's a diploma tucked in there, Amy.
What I do?
I had a diploma tucked in there that I need your signature on. That was what was in the cardboard.
I was like, oh, that's a fancy way to hold on to a pen.
No, it has to be the perfect pen.
Funny. Yeah, I'm glad you looked.
Welcome.
So yeah, everyone, this is Courtney Nyberg. She's been with the district all of 5 days.
Welcome.
She actually started on a Tuesday, so Tuesday to a Tuesday, or Monday to a Monday. And she'll be stepping in, sitting at the table next month.
Wow, well, welcome.
Wow.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for being here tonight. Learning in. Yes, and thank you for all that you put on your shoulders. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, with your smile.
So Courtney, just know that I had already emailed the board. When you started.
Yeah, it was dry.
You
You can just leave it. Thank you so much.
Lived in Rockford, worked at Big West, so they kind of already have a
Perfect.
These all go now that we're in this.
Courtney, what part of Rockford do you live in?
Back behind my tenement, there's a little neighborhood back there. It's actually worked down from my parents.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Krista, where does all
No, it's taken
You can
out
just
and
leave it.
everything
I'll
is
take
back.
care of it.
We'll do it in the morning.
That's one of the beauties of
That's
having it right here.
we're in the book.
Yeah, we love happy days, dog days.
Well, I'll have you,
We'll take the phone,
Yeah.
but we don't have to like put away the chair, put away the microphones and.
Yeah, I suppose.
That's a beautiful thing. Plus, we're in here in the morning anyhow with something else.
You guys
Yeah,
using
Rhonda
that?
actually just talked about that today. Oh, I will.
Who should I vote for? We're on Greenfield.